Thank you. Welcome to our panel. Thank you for coming over to Harvard D to hear about the future of the most important thing in the world, which is your ability to communicate with people from other cultures. The last panel ended a little bit late, as you could all probably tell. Cue that was outside. So we're going to try to still land the plane on time, which means we'll really focus this on the most interesting insights. Generally at GSV, they don't do long introductions, right, because they're trying to keep the content, but I think it's really helpful for people to do what I would call the speed dating version of this, just so people can orient who's speaking and come back to the insights you're about to hear from this panelists. So let me start, Mark.
Yeah. So I'm Markus Witte. I'm co-founder and CEO at Babbel. Babbel is the app that gets you to speak a new language, obviously, on the panel. We're around 700 people worldwide and a couple of million paying subscribers. It's an interactive experience, and we consider ourselves to be the market leader in the app-based learning space.
Thank you. Will you turn up a little bit on some of the speakers, if you can? Thank you. Mait.
Hello, my name is Mait. I'm CEO at Lingvist. Used to be a nuclear physicist, and then somehow my hobby building a language learning application for myself took me to this startup world, and now I have been building the company for 5 years. We're focusing on teaching vocabulary mostly. This is our strong suit. And the bigger goal is actually to develop a technology that enables accelerate human learning so that it's not only for languages but also for other fields of education.
Super. Thank you, Mait.
I'm Katie Nielson. I am the Chief Education Officer at Voxy, which is a web and mobile platform that we use to teach English to learners all over the world. I started teaching English as a second language on an apple orchard when I was 20 years old, and I've been doing it ever since. I've been at Voxy almost since the very beginning, and I'm responsible for making sure that our platform is rooted in language learning science and that it works.
Awesome.
Great.
Matt.
I am a nuclear physicist. No. My name is Matt Hulett. I've been with Rosetta Stone for about 1.5 years. I'm the co-president of Rosetta Stone. Our mission in length and what gets us out of bed every day and morning is to make sure that anyone has the ability to learn to read, write, and speak with confidence. We have 3 really legs to the business. We have Rosetta Stone, our consumer product that's enjoyed by millions of people around the world. We have our E&E business, which is a B2B business where we sell language services to businesses, enterprises, public sector, K-12. And also we have a literacy business called Lexia, which is, we believe, the best product for K-12 students to learn how to read. So that's us.
Fantastic. So we just jump right in. 2019, right? If you go at this conference, almost anywhere else in this country, around the world, a lot of people are talking about the rise of artificial intelligence. At the same time, the connections that people make are crucial in this business. And there's a mix of different types of services represented in the group. But I think you put it this way, Matt. Is it AI or HI? HI being human interaction. That's going to be essentially the mega trend as we look forward to language learning. Let me start with Katie. What do you think about that, this tension with respect to the full rounded picture of language?
I think the tension is sort of unnecessary. That we can do a lot of things with AI that enable us to use technology for what computers can do best, so we can have humans do what people do best. Because you can't take people out of language learning. So what you can do is make what people do more focused and more efficient and use technology to enable that.
I largely agree. I don't think that we can replace humans in language. A language is one of the things that's deepest built into us as humans. You can argue that language makes us human, and compared to us humans, machines actually suck at languages, at natural languages. They're better at math than we are. And then some other things, but at languages we excel. And there's a point of interacting with humans that makes us want to learn languages in the first place. Natural languages, that is. There's also computer languages for other things, and in that I think machine learning can help more than in the natural language field. I still think there's a lot of things that technology, especially machine learning, can do in that field, and that are mostly unexploited yet.
Got it. Would you care to give an example, Markus? I think comes to pops in your
One thing that's improving in the moment is voice recognition, accent reduction. That's what is emerging and what we see getting better now.
Yeah.
And that's models being trained by larger data sets. But also when we look at what Mait does, space repetition and curves of forgetting, we can actually predict stuff there. Always if it's kind of atomic elements of learning that are not necessarily connected to networks, it can help a lot. But I think the biggest piece is the actual interface, seeing where the user is, in which environment they are, when do they learn, how do they prefer to learn, not in the way that I learn vocabulary this way, but I learn when I'm at home on my sofa, and the app can adapt to that. I think that's still the biggest part of adaptation.
Very, very exciting. Mait?
Yeah, I should create some tension to disagree with you, but I really can't, because there are some things that humans can do better, and some things that computers can do better. And if we combine those in the language learning, then we get the best outcome. Computers are really good at measuring the memory, measuring the space repetition, making you to learn some things that you do not really need to learn in the classroom very, very fast. And so if you go to the classroom, then you have much more vocabulary and gunpowder to actually take the best out of the classroom and the teachers. So AI can really help in one domain, but humans are really a valuable part of the equation.
Matt, agree or disagree?
Unfortunately, I can't disagree with anybody on the panel. I think in cases of valuing my taxes or driverless cars, I think AI does a wonderful job. I'm about a year and a half new to the EdTech space. This show is relatively new to me. And when I first started at Rosetta Stone, everyone kept saying pedagogy, pedagogy, pedagogy. And I'm like, what the heck is everyone talking about?
Right.
And the reality is, I kept asking the question, what's the best methodology to get everyone around the world to learn a language? And everyone started talking about HI versus AI. I think the answer, I don't know if anyone would disagree, I'd love to debate, is blended learning is the best way to learn. It just so happens it's very expensive to do that. You can't have, nor would it be somewhat creepy to have a tutor with you all day if you could afford it. People around the world can't afford tutoring. So I would say this. Yes, we can't replace human beings. I happen to like human beings. There are very specific things like our speech recognition technology that we have that's very good at rote things and getting things down to the phenome. But I would say that if we can all figure out how to apply AI so that it supplements the work of a teacher or a tutor, that is an interesting technical challenge. So in the future, I think we should be shooting for 50-50. Why not? Why can't we have the world-class language access to people around the world who can't afford it? So I don't think that we're having AI tutors 100%.
Got it. Well, it's interesting because all of our panelists have digital services, digital-centric services, and the discussion of emphasizing the human in the loop, right? Sounds like there's a lot of harmony on your point of view on that basis. But let's jump to the next level. You talk about blended, so it brings up a lot of memes. Some people in this room are very familiar with. You say blended learning, okay, there's this other big buzzword, personalization, that comes up all the time. Let's talk about the personalization. I know Voxy's doing some incredible work on this basis. Maybe Katie, talk about it a little bit. How significant is this? Are we at a turning point in personalization?
I mean, I would argue that the most important thing for language learning is personalization. Fundamentally, learning a language is learning a skill, and human beings learn skills best when they can practice.
Right.
And adults don't pay attention to things that aren't interesting to them. So if you're asking them to learn how to speak English and you're giving them content that's not relevant and not interesting, then they won't pay attention, which is why you see that one-size-fits-all approaches where we teach everybody the words for apple and banana and book and airplane, they don't actually work.
Right.
So you should start with what people need. And the only way to do that is to have personalization at scale. So you can't have language learning without personalization, which we can use computers to do.
Certainly, it sounds like a noble goal. I'm sure making that occur is quite difficult.
It depends. Our approach is rooted in the idea that what matters is the content that you give people. So we've invested in creating a tool that lets us give people personalized content at scale.
Very
If you think that you want to write materials and personalize things that way, then yes, it would be an impossible task.
And just one more tuck at this. What does that mean to give content that's relevant to their context? Give us an example.
Okay, so people learn languages for different reasons. I just gave a presentation last week where I looked at a bunch of learners who need to learn workplace English, and they wanted to do things that were as disparate as reading and writing resumes or being an entrepreneur, which different tasks. I should give those two people different lessons. The person who wants to learn to be an entrepreneur should watch videos of people networking and read what you're supposed to do when you offer someone your business card and understand how to write a business plan and pitch a business. Somebody who needs to write a resume needs to learn something entirely different. So we can't teach them the same way, we can't teach them the same thing, and we need to give them different tools.
Got it. And connect to their motivation.
Yes.
Right. Mait, there's a not hard but a soft launch that happened today, right, on your platform.
Yeah, we
talk
have,
about this. I think it's personalization.
We're very, very deep in the personalization because the whole idea of building that kind of software is in personalization, measuring every single thing that people learn individually, every single item or word. And now we are taking it to the next level so that we personalize the whole content so that people can type in some keywords and it automatically finds magically all of the other adjacent words that people need to know in this domain and generates the course in a couple of seconds, all of the example sentences, all of the audio files. And if people even do not want to type in these keywords, then they can just drop in some kind of text. For example, I'm working in a European Commission. I plug in my emails into the platform and it generates exactly the same language that I need to learn in European Union.
Right.
So it's super, super personalized.
Right.
It's interest in photography or astronomy or something else, and it can, in a couple of seconds, create this magically long tail of language courses that that is something that cannot be done manually because there are so many different needs for people.
Right. Well, let me jump back to Matt if I could. So Rosetta Stone, your point of view on personalization. I mean, we still remember going to the shopping malls 20 years ago and emerging with that yellow box.
Yes.
Rosetta Stone signature.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of content there.
Yeah.
Have you guys made a lot of strides to personalization?
Yeah, I think the way we think about personalization, and I would say that Rosetta Stone's an interesting case study in a company that took a while to actually cannibalize its own business model. We were largely a CD business, even up until recently, and it moved all the way to a consumer SaaS subscription business, and that's a learning curve in and of itself.
Yes.
I would say this about Rosetta Stone is that most people typically think of us as an immersion company because most people experience our product with an app or a web product that has kind of a flashcard style interactivity model.
Right.
We actually have a lot of content in our other businesses that we started integrating with our product. So for instance, we have advanced English products that we integrate with that product, and people like them. We started introducing the ability for mobile users to actually collect images in real life using AR, augmented reality, and incorporate that into their language learning. So I agree that personalization's key, also engagement's key. And the hunger curve for learners around the world is different. Hunger curve is way different for APAC learners that want to learn English than Americans that feel like they want to learn French for their vacation.
Right.
So you also have to look at things very personalized by the geo and the intent of the person. That's very distinct. And for example, we just launched a product that's extremely personalized for APAC learners in Korea, completely different than our consumer product. So I 100% agree. And time on task is super important.
Right.
So you have to build these addiction loops that gets people back into the product.
Yes. Well, and personalization helps that, presumably. And so, Markus, you build a very at-scale business. I think you're a person that understands a lot about how to drive a very at-scale audience into the product. How do you think about that scale with this personalization question?
I think it depends where you come from. So I could make both cases. Towards a more traditional business, I would say it's all about personalization. That's the only thing that matters. For a pure play digital business, you can easily overdo it in terms of thriving for it because if you try to auto-generate language learning content, you run into trouble pretty quickly. I think actually that Voxy is a good example of how you can do it, but it's kind of a small path, because if you overdo the personalization piece, and then it becomes like random content, and you have all these elements of language that all depend on each other. You have 4 skills, or actually 5, I would argue, and they are interconnected. You need the vocabulary and all, and then as humans we need stories. We need characters to identify with, and so on. And it's very hard to bring that into a completely computer-generated setting. So I think we have to walk the line between personalization, and I totally agree that creates the relevant content for everybody, and still has a cohesion and kind of a story progression to it. And I think that's the challenge. So overall, I would say personalization is a balancing act.
And those stories are stories that can be shared by people with a lot of different motivations, for example. So you're leveraging stories that are somewhat, that you're going to make common to a lot of different learner types.
Yes. So stories are important for us just as humans,
yes.
And especially in language learning, we think around situations and stories. We want characters to interact with and to identify with.
Yes.
And again, we need to put that into a context also with cultural learning and all the other things around language learning. And that's pretty complex stuff.
Right. Katie, you want to
I think we're mixing up a little bit personalization as done completely by machine and personalization that can be done by humans enabled by machine. Because I wouldn't say that all personalization that can be done automatically is what you want, because you do end up with a bunch of random out of context stuff that makes no sense.
Yeah.
Right.
But if you can take the output of an algorithm and give it to a person to make a smart decision about what should be personalized, then you're doing what we were talking about at the beginning, which is leveraging what we can with technology to make instruction work as well as it can.
Right. Understood. Well, it's interesting. We have 2 folks from America on the panel and 2 folks from Europe. I want to speak for a second about probably the biggest master question that exists here, which is, what do you think the capacity for fluency, everyday fluency, really is, given the time on task people can put into your platforms, given the existence of platforms you can reach into your pocket 24/7 and access? I mean, have we fundamentally changed the bar for fluency? And what are your personal ones? You've dedicated a large part of your life here to this business. What do you think about this issue? Basically, do these tools make it possible to get to a higher level of fluency than we've ever experienced in civilization? Matt, how about that, Matt?
Well, it's funny, as we were preparing for this panel, I started looking at my phone, and the screen time was saying I've been on my phone too much. I do think there's never been a time where, like, obviously we've captured the most amount of sound and photos in the last 10 years in the history of time. I do think there's a tremendous amount of efficiency that you can get through technology, but also a lot of distraction. And I guess it depends, from my perspective, on the hunger scale. So if someone is bound and determined as an immigrant, and for example, some of our ELs, I've seen some incredibly inspiring stories from somebody who is dedicating hours a day to get to fluency or near fluency because they have to, versus whether you want to. And so I think, while I believe in personalization, I believe in personalization of the also style of learning, whether you're procedural or declarative and how you turn things up or down based on your learning style. I do think it comes down to what's your motivation. So yes, I think people are going to get more fluent faster with technology, but I think it depends on where you're coming from.
That's real helpful. Mait, jump in.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it that fluency is something that you achieve when you actually use the language. You use it, you have some kind of purpose, and you use it. And the role of the softwares is to pick people up to the level where they can go out to the field and start using it. And probably there is possible to achieve fluency using a software as well, but what's the point of it? It will be a very boring journey. If you imagine you are playing football and you need to do some practices with the ball, and you never play the game. What's the purpose of practicing if you never play the game? So it's the same with the language.
Markus, maybe.
Yeah,
add on to that.
I couldn't agree more. If you learn just to get better at the app, you actually created a game, which might be worth it and might be nice to play, but it's not about learning. It might be unexpected for somebody who builds and sells a language learning app, but I think there's two things. One is the ability to get really fluent, to real fluency with just an app is limited. So for me, apps are if you want, the entry drug, and they're extremely successful in getting people to start learning a language. So what we see is many, many more people that start learning a language. Millions of Babbel users never would have gone to a store and buy a language learning book or a CD or enroll to a course. So when we ask our customers, which other products did you look at? They often say none. Right. And that's the opportunity, and that's fantastic to see. That still means that from a certain point on, we have to add other means of learning. We have to put them in front of a teacher one way or another.
I see. Well, that's very interesting. So you're saying the access to at least that very first step on the ladder is now more pervasive than ever before. So that's the achievement, perhaps, at this age. Katie, I know you've spent decades doing this. What's your POV?
That you can do both at the same time. So you can use an app to get people interested, but you can also create real experiences using technology so that people can interact with teachers and other students and do all of it in a way that was not possible before we had the ability to teach virtual classes.
Yes.
You mentioned English language learners. I think I read about a month ago, as a country, we reach 4% of the adult English language learners who need access to instruction, and 96% can't access instruction at all. So that's what we need to be doing with technology. I mean, I think the way different people operationalize fluency depends upon context, but the 96% of adult learners in the United States who want to be able to speak English for integration purposes to better their lives, they can't take classes, they can't go get instruction in traditional ways, and we can reach them and use technology to offer real experiences. If you make it into a game, it's not going to work. Like, games only do so much. They can get you excited about learning and they can teach you a few things, but the technology has potential to do way more than teach people with games.
So it sounds like there's a lot of agreement on this point, which is that these digital tools are one part of it, and there's a huge access payoff on this basis, the access dividend, if you will. But if I could ask a question, just tug on this a little bit more, if I could. I mean, speaking from your points of view, do you see that the critical part for your companies, is to somehow do something multimodal, or at least make referrals into multimodal? Is that a part of your business, or is it just you want to take your part of the context and do it great? Markus.
So first of all, to what you said, I think, and I'm not saying you said that, but we need to be careful to not trying to replace people by technology. I think there's a trend, especially in the US, to fire people and buy software. That's not good.
I definitely didn't say that.
No, I know that you did.
Okay.
I know that you did, and that you wouldn't. Just to make that point, I think that's a tendency that's dangerous and wrong. We don't want to replace teachers, and I hope that none of us wants to do that. So for us as a specific business, what we're trying to do is guide learners through a journey that's more than just a subscription. It's not just that you buy a product for 2 years and then your language learning journey is over. Very often it takes like almost a whole lifespan. And it's off and on. It's not a continuous thing. I start learning a language, and then I get to some point where I drop it, and for whatever reason, I take it up again. And very often I switch methods in between. And what's my guidance? How do I know what's best for me? I actually don't.
Right.
And that is what we're exploring now. And we recently bought a language travel business, which is a big thing in Europe. So you go to a destination school, basically, go to Spain to learn Spanish, or to Mexico. I think that is the next step for us, to make that connection to these businesses, not replace them, but connect the user to those businesses and get that going.
So the company is evolving to sort of capture much more of this entire life
Absolutely.
cycle of
I think ultimately we need to go beyond the app. The app is still a crucial part because people start with the app,
Yes.
and whatever people do in their language learning journey, they use an app on the side.
Right, right.
And it would be more or less stupid not to.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
So why can't the app help in making those connections? I think that's what we're doing now, and that's what we're exploring in different fields.
That's a great insight. Very up to the minute, it sounds. Mait, do you have a perspective on this?
Yeah, this is exactly the same purpose why we created this personalization, or mass personalization as we call it, because if people have some purposes to learn a language outside of this application, then if it reflects the real life, the real needs, then they will be more engaged, they will learn more efficiently, and they will use it in the real life where what's the reason of learning it.
Right, right. Makes good sense. Katie, Matt, do you want to offer on this? Or
Yeah.
keep going? Okay.
Sure. We know that self-study alone doesn't work for learning languages. There have been decades of research showing this
Very
over and
interesting.
over again. Learners don't
Those
persist
insights.
unless there's something else there. So
Got it.
integrating live instruction with your offering, even if it's virtual live instruction, drives both engagement and outcomes. So like, we never offer the software by itself. It's part of something that's mediated by humans, whether we offer the instruction or we work with somebody else who offers the instruction.
Right.
People start using things and they stop.
Right, right.
Yeah, no, it's being new to this industry. Do you mind if I jump in?
I was going to ask you a question on
Yeah,
this,
okay.
to jump in if you don't mind.
Yeah.
We talked about AI out in the hallway, and one of your other companies is leveraging AI in esports, very interestingly enough. When you mentioned that this goes back to the HI question that we began with, this keeps coming up. But I mean, we sit here in a conference, that does some speculation of the future technology. I mean, do we have this idea of synthesized personas that are going to be compelling enough that you think might actually change the equation that Katie?
Synthesized persona.
Things of that nature.
That sounds pretty
Yes.
exciting. Here's what I'll say.
Yeah, Max Headroom, I think Max Headroom,
No,
but
I totally
updated,
get it.
yeah.
That's what my kids are. As a relative rookie to the space, there's
Yeah.
$6 trillion is spent in learning around the world.
Right.
Projected to be 10 trillion. About 2 to 3% of that is digital. And when I look at language learning, and a little bit of what Markus was talking about was how I think about it. When we talk to our customers, maybe they're using us 10 to 15% of the time in their language learning journey. And so I'm going to answer your question kind of like I'm answering two questions at once. We're all about the stack. Like
Yeah.
we've been doing blended learning with live tutoring since 2009. We just rolled out a new version of that, smartphone based in Korea. It'll be going out globally. And the persona component. So yes, I think I think you're hearing that everyone's going after different modalities. We're going to start going
Right.
very, very deep into language learning and enhancing that live instruction experience and make it very personalized. So every time you talk to the tutor, they know exactly your learning preferences and they can very, very much personalize that experience. Not as a tutoring company, but as a company when you use humans, when you absolutely need them and need that context. And that personalized instruction. Now, to answer your question, do I think that there is a version of a virtual tutor that can offset some of your learning? 100%.
Yeah.
We're doing that in one of our new EL products that we're rolling out. We actually have animated personas that we part of the product using our speech recognition technology.
Right.
And why is that important? People generally are afraid to fail. And so if you can actually practice prior to a real interaction,
Very interesting.
that's super helpful.
So talk to
Especially
the tunes, practice, and then you go meet a live.
Absolutely. You know, a smart tune.
Right, a
You know,
smart tune.
That's what's backed by machine learning, that's backed by pedagogy that works.
Right.
Absolutely. There are times when it makes sense.
So as we spin around the track here, we're catching up for our previous, we're making up for our previous panels. I want to ask the big question, then we can open up to a question time, which is, it's 2019, right? So 1999, remember that? 2009, or now 2019, it feels like 99 again. But let's roll forward another 10 years on a totally different topic, which is this topic. If we do this panel in 10 years, despite that, probably doing some virtual reality setup, let's talk about, let's roll forward 10 years. What's different, Markus?
I think what's not going to be very different is formal education, unfortunately, because that's changing so slowly. And that will probably be one of the focus areas. How can we change school and how can we improve school?
Yeah.
I think by then, the the education for adults, lifelong learning, should be pretty much solved and mature. So I think by that time we will have methods to assist teaching that are just good enough. I think the challenge will be how do we bring that into the institutions, and how do we keep up, especially language learning, the relevance of language learning in institutions and in societies. Because what we see, especially in the English-speaking world, is that language learning is deprioritized. In this country, as well as in the UK, we see that very strongly, and that trend might go on. So one of the big things that we might argue about in 10 years is how can we get language learning back into schools, and how can we use technology in that and bring current technology into schools. That's not probably a bit too pessimistic, but that's what I believe.
Still got to crack the formal piece, what it would be, right? Katie, then we'll circle back.
I hope that in 10 years we talk about outcomes more than we have right now. That we don't have products that don't work. That the very first thing we do when we build a new platform is make sure that we understand how we're going to measure whether or not it works, and then we have clear metrics for measuring that as we go forward.
Fantastic, and I know that this is a very important topic. You kind of put it aside to cover this.
I don't know whether you accidentally introduced
Measurement,
it, but this is something that we are very, very passionate about, because if we want to build a company that is really value-adding to the world, and we're building a company for making education better, then we have to be able to measure the learning. And it's incredibly difficult thing to measure. I see it as the main reason why many companies have failed to deliver their promises, because you can measure whether people go get an exam done. They learn very intensively before the exam. Afterwards, they forget everything. So, and there are not really methodologies to measure this long-term impact. But if we want to build a sustainable company in the educational space, then we have to be able to measure learning. And AI is really, really helpful to actually develop this technology that enables us to measure that this 2 minutes that I spent today, what's the impact of it, this learning in 1 week, in 1 month, in 1 year. And I think this will be the game changer that will make education much, much, much more efficient in 10 years. I think we are not speaking in 10 years that we need 5 years to learn a language. I really don't think so. I think we're doing it in months.
So the brain doesn't change.
The brain doesn't change.
That's a safe assumption. But the brains of these products change enough that we finally get.
Thanks to the personalization and thanks to the AI that can accelerate
that's great.
Learning,
great
we will be able to learn much, much, much more in 10 years.
Rock and roll. Matt, do you want to finish off?
I thought Mait was going to say he's all for Elon Musk's implant of the brain and
There's always an implant.
the limbic system. Well, it's funny. I had one answer, and after listening to Mait, I changed mine. Well, we won't be debating AI versus HI.
Yeah.
I know that. I know we won't be debating that, but I would
point.
say that hopefully we will be debating and hopefully having some solutions for the fundamental sea change that AI will have in terms of the amount of real learning and curriculum that has to change because jobs in certain industries are going to go away. And I think it's going to be extremely severe, and the education system has to adjust to that. Whether we can get there, I don't want to sound as pessimistic as Markus, but unfortunately I am. And I do think that we are going to be debating that. Collaboration skills, communication skills, creative skills need to be shifted, focused on versus rote learning. And I think those are the things, unfortunately, we'll be debating.
That sounds good.
I hate to end on a low note, but it's similar.
Well, it's going to be positive, saying that humans stay important and human skills stay important, which is a terrific way. Well, can we round of applause for our panelists.
Thank you.
And for those, everyone will make our way and